Do you draw eyes like this, yet don't know how to improve to the next level? Well, you've come to the right place. In this video, I'm going to show you the do's and don'ts of drawing a single eyeball. Okay, so I totally apologize for the extremely cheesy intro, I just had to, but on a serious note, in this video I'm actually going to show you step by step. It's going to be a rather quick intro, and you guys can find the real-time video upon my Patreon. If you want to try this tutorial out, the materials you're going to need are an HB pencil, a darker pencil that has a darker value such as 8B, and a tortillon or tortillon. I actually cannot pronounce it in English, but something to smudge your graphite with, and an eraser, of course, in case you make mistakes. Now, if you're a beginner at drawing eyes, I would actually suggest getting familiar with reference photos. I think this is extremely important and actually a pretty good step in the drawing process, especially if you're learning. What I like to do is I like to browse sites like Pinterest, where I will literally just search for eyes, and you will get all kinds of results with the most beautiful eyes in the world, and you'll get different varieties and different shapes and different colors, and it's just a really great starting point. So I check out Pinterest, I find an eye I want to draw, and then I literally try to copy it as best as I can. And I do this for just learning purposes. Now, if I were to do another painting or an original piece of art, I would of course modify this reference photo for my liking and do something original, but there's always going to be a reference photo to start with. And this has just helped me immensely with my actual drawing process and drawing journey over the past couple years. I just want to briefly start with the don'ts of drawing an eye. I'm just going to list some of the most common mistakes when you're first starting to learn how to draw an eye. Guys, don't worry, I did these mistakes too, and I tell you one thing, it does get better. You just have to be aware of them, and you've got to actively try to improve upon them. So I think one of the first mistakes that I actually used to do a lot was I kind of fell for the whole idea of, you know, the eye shape being the shape of an almond, and we're pretty much told that. But in reality, when you look extremely close at your reference photo, you're going to see that an eye is actually much more asymmetrical than an almond. And it's also much more angular, and there are a lot of curvatures that are quite unique to an eye, which is quite important why you need to refer back to your reference photo. Another mistake is in regards to just the general eyeball itself. The eye is not necessarily just a round circle right in the middle of the actual almond-shaped eye. This is one of the biggest mistakes. I'm going to talk about how to fix this in the actual do part of this video. Another mistake is most likely drawing too hard on the paper. So you want to avoid hard lines, you want to keep it soft, you want to build the layers, build the shadows, and just gradually build this over the time that you're drawing. And the last kind of common mistake is actually regarding the eyelashes. You want to avoid the whole spider thing. A good way to avoid this is to actually really study your reference photo and look at the way that the eyelashes move, in which direction, which thicknesses, and which size actually. So I'm going to talk about that in the do part, just to give you tips on how to make it much more realistic. For the do's, the first piece of advice I can give you is actually regarding the general shape of the eye. I typically start drawing the upper part of the eye, and I make my way down into the inner corner part of the eye. All of the lines that you're seeing me draw now is based on the study that I did from my reference photo. So I generally just take a look at the photo first, and I really study to see exactly which curves appear where, and from then on I use that to build the actual shape of the eye. The next thing I draw are the details of the eye. This includes the lower eyelid. It also includes the crease of the upper eyelid, as well as the corner of the eye. Again, the general shape and positioning of these lines and details is all drawn according to the study of my reference photo. As for the eyelashes, I typically start on the outside part of the eye. For example, here in this case, it's on the right. and I typically draw them in a longer length. As I make my way to the inner part of the eye, the lashes will become shorter and they will actually move in the direction of the curved upper part of the eye. The next step is to draw the iris. So as I mentioned in the don'ts part of the video, a common mistake is when someone will try to fit the iris in the center of the white space of the eye. And this is a common mistake. The way that you typically would draw an iris is that it would sit on the bottom part of the lower eyelid, and the upper part of the iris is actually covered a little bit by the upper eyelid. Something that does help me with the positioning of the iris is to use the crease of the upper eyelid as a starting point to know when to start drawing the iris. The next step is to actually start filling in the details of the iris and to draw the pupil. Now the pupil is typically a round shape in the center of the iris, and it's also typically the darkest part of the eye. I start off with drawing a general kind of outline of where the pupil will stand, and I also make room for a highlight. So I do indicate already where some of the highlight will be by just not sketching this in. Now in regards to actually sketching in the color of the eye, you have to remember that the iris does contain a variety of different tones, and it's quite important that you do start off by sketching rather lightly and you build upon that value with a darker pencil, for example. Generally, an iris will be darker around its edges, and it will gradually become lighter as you go towards the center of the iris. Something I do like to add additionally, depending on the general shading of your reference photo, is the top part of the iris could also be much darker because there is a shadow casted down from the upper part of the eyelid. Another way to bring a more realistic feature to your eye is to start rendering the shadows within the eyeball itself. There are shadows directly below the upper part of the eyelid that can curve around the corners of the eye, and by rendering these shadows, it will actually make it look like a 3D effect. So it's really good that you just don't miss out on this step because it does add another kind of realistic dimension to your overall eye. At this point in the drawing, something I like to do is enhance my eyelashes by adding some soft, delicate hairs. They are much lighter compared to the darker ones, and this will just add more realism to your drawing as well. Afterwards, what I like to do is to build some more detail and tone of the eyelid and the surrounding area of the eye by just gradually shading the area. I will also start to use a darker value of pencil to start building the color or the contrast. And typically I will use my 8B pencil to go and kind of just redraw on top of the outline of the eyeball itself, like the eyelashes and the iris, and I just want to darken some of the areas, and this will definitely make a huge contrast compared to your lighter parts of the eye. The eyebrow generally starts a little bit before the inner corner part of the eye. In this case, I will start sketching the eyebrow hairs from the left to the right and just kind of go along with a general outline shape that I do draw for the eyebrow. The hairs that appear at the very front part of the eyebrow are generally longer, and they shorten as you progress down to the end part of the eyebrow. The trick here to making a realistic eyebrow is to fill it in with actual hair type texture. And what this means is use your pencil and draw some short and curved motions to simulate actual hair. And of course you want to look at your reference photo in more detail to see exactly the shape of the person's eyebrow and the way that the hair curves. Because when you're drawing hair, it doesn't always just go in the same direction. There's actually a curvature to it. And as the last and final step, I do take my tortillon or blending stump to just kind of spread around the graphite, and this just creates a lot more of a realistic look. You can blend the darker tones with the lighter tones of your sketch and yeah, just make it look much more realistic. So I do typically use it a lot for the shadows as well as for the iris and for the kind of spaces in between the crease of the upper eyelid and the general areas around the eye.
And that's basically it. I say that like it's an easy thing, but of course it's never easy to draw a proper eye. I hope that this tutorial did help you. If you guys do like these types of tutorials, please let me know in the comments below. Also, let me know what other types of do's and don'ts videos you want me to cover. I have admired a lot of other artists that have been doing this, and it actually has helped me a lot in my learning process. So I figured I would return the favor and try my hand at a couple of these videos for you guys. As always, don't forget to give this a big thumbs up, do subscribe to my YouTube channel for more art videos, and check out my social media. I have Instagram, Facebook, and now I'm on Patreon, so brand new on Patreon. I'm quite excited for this. We're going to see how it works out. I'd like to wish you guys all a fantastic day. Keep drawing, keep being awesome, and we will see each other very soon. Bye, guys!